The signed contract was still warm in her hand when she opened the bedroom door. Mireya Sinclair built her hospitality branding studio from nothing. 29 years old. Black, brilliant. 3 weeks from her wedding. That night she came home early to celebrate. She found her fiancé Adrian in bed with her sister. 48 hours later, her own family called her the unstable one. They asked her to leave. She ended up crying at a corner table in a quiet cafe. Her hand slipped. Documents scattered across the floor of the next table, a man's table. A charcoal suit, a white tiger inked up the side of his neck. A wheelchair he did not explain. They called him Baeko, Han So-jun. He did not offer pity. He did not offer comfort. He looked at the papers on the floor, then at her, and asked one precise question. Because printed on one of those documents was the name of her own studio, on a contract she never signed. But what happened after she picked up that page? Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click Join to become a member and help our channel. Mireya signed the last page before the banker finished his sentence. "You'll want to read the amortization schedule first," he said, sliding a second folder across the desk. "I read it last night." She capped her pen. Twice. The banker blinked. On the wall behind him, a clock ticked toward 9. She had a family dinner at 7:30 and a supplier call at noon, and 3 weeks left before a wedding she was paying for, out of the same account she'd just leveraged. The refinance freed $80,000. It also tied her studio to a rate that would strangle her if the Hanuel contract fell through. The Hanuel contract was not going to fall through. "Congratulations, Miss Sinclair. The funds clear Monday." She stood, shook his hand, and was on the street before the elevator doors closed. The gold hoops in her ears caught the light. She didn't slow down for it. 3 years she'd spent building the studio from a rented desk, hospitality branding, the invisible language of luxury hotels, the way a lobby made you feel wealthy before you'd unpacked. She'd made grown men who owned skylines feel small in a pitch room. And in 9 hours she'd be at her mother's table, cutting a roast, listening to that same mother explain to the neighbors what a catch Adrian was. Her phone buzzed. Adrian, a photo of 2 champagne flutes on a hotel balcony, no caption. She typed back one word. "Soon." Then she put the phone away and kept walking toward the studio, because the Hanuel call came before the champagne. The studio smelled of coffee and printer toner. 2 junior designers looked up when she came in, then looked back down when they saw her face. The face that meant the meeting was already over in her head, and they should just execute. "Where are we on the supplier packet?" "Adrian sent the revised vendor list this morning," the taller one said. "He said route everything through the names he flagged." She stopped. "He said?" "He called the front line, said you'd approved it." She had not approved it. She kept her voice even. "Send me the list. I'll handle vendors. Adrian handles guests and the toast." A small laugh from the room. She let it sit. Then, because trust was a muscle she'd overtrained, she added, "It's fine. He's excited. Send me the list anyway." They sent the list. She glanced at it for 4 seconds, saw 3 names she didn't recognize, sitting where her regulars should be, and told herself she'd sort it after the signing. There was always an after. That was the disease of building something. You kept postponing the reckoning, because tomorrow there'd be more of everything. More money, more time, more forgiveness to spend. At noon, the Hanuel call connected. The voice on the other end belonged to a procurement officer she'd never meet, speaking for a hotel group she'd been chasing for a year. He read the terms. She confirmed them. He said the contract would arrive by courier that afternoon, signed on their end, awaiting hers. "Miss Sinclair, the board was specific. They chose your studio over 3 larger firms. They said your work looked like it cost more than it did." It costs exactly what it's worth. A pause, then dry. They'll like you. The courier came at 4. She signed the Hanul contract at her own desk, alone, with the cheap pen from the drawer instead of the good one, because the good one was in her bag, and she didn't want to stop moving to find it. Flagship Hotel, lead design. Her name on the master agreement in a font she'd chosen herself. She held the page a moment, just a moment, then she slid it into the folder, into her bag, into the inside pocket with the zipper, and she left an hour early. Not for the dinner, for Adrian. She wanted to show him first. She wanted to watch his face when he understood she'd done it, the thing they'd stayed up whispering about, the thing that would fund the wedding and the apartment and the life. She wanted, for once, to arrive somewhere with good news instead of a deadline. The apartment they shared was on the 4th floor of a converted brownstone. She had the key out before the elevator opened. Her heels were loud in the hall, and she didn't quiet them, because there was nothing to be quiet about, because it was her home, and her news, and her man. The bedroom door was open a hand's width. She heard it before she understood it. A laugh she knew. Not Adrian's. Celeste's. Mireia stopped in the hall with the folder still in her bag, and her hand still on the strap. Through the gap, she saw the corner of the bed, the pale pink of a dress she'd complimented at Easter, a rose gold bracelet on a wrist she'd known since it was small enough to fit inside her own hand. Her sister. Adrian said something low. Celeste laughed again, and then she said, "She won't be back till 9, in the easy voice of a person who had checked. Mireia did not move. The training held her still, the way it held her still in pitch rooms, when a client tried to lowball her. The stillness that came before the price went up, not down. She could have opened the door. She thought about the weight of it, the exact push it would take. She thought about the folder in her bag, the 80,000 clearing Monday, the 3 unfamiliar vendor names Adrian had slipped into her packet that morning. 3 weeks before the wedding. She stepped back from the door. 1 step. Quiet now, the heels she hadn't bothered to quiet a minute ago. In the kitchen, she set her bag on the counter without a sound. She took out her phone. Her hands were steady, which frightened her more than shaking would have, because steady meant some part of her had already known, had been filing the small evidence for months in the pocket with the zipper. She photographed the hallway, the open door, the pink hem visible through the gap. She didn't know yet why she needed it. She would learn. Then she picked up her bag, walked back to the front door, opened it, and slammed it hard. "Mireia?" Adrian's voice, sudden, high. "Just me," she called, bright as glass. "Home early, big news." She heard the scramble, the specific sounds of 2 adults becoming decent. She stood in the entryway and watched the bedroom door and counted, and when Adrian came out buttoning his shirt with the camera-ready smile already in place, she noted that it took him 14 seconds, and that the smile still didn't reach his eyes. "You're early," he said. I signed Hanul. For half a second, something moved in his face that was not joy. It was calculation. She saw it, and he saw her see it, and then the smile widened to cover the gap. "That's incredible." He crossed to her. We have to celebrate." Celeste came out behind him. Straightened dress, smoothed hair, chin up in the way she did when she'd decided to be brave about something she should have been ashamed of. "Congrats, sis," she said. "Thank you." Mireia looked at her sister. She kept her face open and warm and terrible. "Nice bracelet." Celeste's hand went to her wrist before she could stop it. Nobody said the true thing. That was the part Mireia would remember. How 3 people stood in a small entryway, with the truth pooled at their feet, and stepped around it like a spill. Adrian talked about dinner. Celeste said she'd come to help set up the surprise. The champagne. Hadn't Adrian sent the picture? Mireia said yes, he'd sent the picture. She agreed with everything. She agreed her way to the door and down the stairs and into the street. And only when she was 3 blocks gone did she stop and put a hand flat against a wall. 12 degrees out. She didn't feel it. She did not cry there. She saved it. Dinner was at 7:30 and she went, because not going was information and she was not ready to give any away. Her mother's house glowed. The table held the good plates. Her father carved. Her mother, Denise, had done her hair. "There she is," Denise said, and there was pride in it, the specific pride of a woman displaying a daughter who'd married up in prospects if not yet in fact. "My girl who signs contracts. Sit, sit. Adrian's telling us about the honeymoon." Adrian was at the table. Of course he was. Celeste beside him, one chair down, hands folded, eyes on her plate. They'd come straight from the apartment. They'd had time to align their story in the car. Mireia sat. She let her mother serve her. She let Adrian describe a coastline he'd never take her to, and she watched her family lean toward him, the way plants lean toward a window. 3 weeks, Denise said, gripping Mireia's forearm. 3 weeks, and you're a married woman. I never thought I'd see the day you'd let go enough to let a man love you. Neither did I, Mireia said. Her father laughed. Adrian laughed. Celeste did not. Denise refilled Mireia's glass without asking. You work too hard. That's your trouble. Always have. Even as a girl, everything was a project. Adrian's going to be good for you. He knows how to slow a person down. Does he? Mireia said. He calms you. Her mother patted her hand. Everyone can see it. Across the table, Adrian buttered a roll with great care. He did not look up. Celeste's fork scraped the plate once and stopped. You're quiet tonight, Cel, their father said. Headache, Celeste said. She's been running herself down too, Denise said, warm again, turning her whole face toward the younger daughter. My girls, both of you, always burning at both ends. Mireia watched her mother love them equally, generously, in total ignorance of the room she'd been standing in 6 hours earlier. It would have been kinder, she thought, if the woman had been cruel. Cruelty she could have used. Under the table, Mireia's phone sat in her lap. She turned it face up. The photograph waited there, the open door, the pink hem. She could put it on the table between the gravy and the good plates. She could end 3 weeks of pretending in one motion. She looked at her mother's face, lit up and certain and happy. She looked at her father, who had walked her to the front of a room only in his imagination, who'd been practicing. She looked at Celeste's bowed head. She turned the phone back over, not because she forgave it, because she understood, sitting there with the roast going cold, that if she said it now, at this table, with the folder still in her bag, and the refinance not yet cleared, and Adrian's 3 vendor names buried in her supplier packet, she would be the one who bled. She didn't have the whole shape of it yet. She only knew there was a shape. So she smiled, and she raised her glass when her mother toasted, and she said, To family. Adrian met her eyes over the rim. To family. She drank. It took Adrian less than 48 hours. She never learned the exact order of the calls. She reconstructed it later from the residue, the way her mother's voice changed on the phone Sunday morning, the way Celeste stopped answering entirely, the way a cousin she barely spoke to sent a message that began, I heard you've been under a lot of stress. By Sunday afternoon, the story had a title, and the title was Mireia. She was controlling. Everyone had always known it, apparently. The way she ran her business into her relationship, the way she'd made Adrian route the wedding vendors through her, the way she monitored his phone. She was unstable. The pressure of the contract had done something to her. She'd come home Friday making accusations, wild ones, about her own sister, her own sister. And hadn't that always been the shame of it? How Mireia couldn't stand to see Celeste happy. She read each message twice, not for the pain, for the architecture. Someone had built this fast, and built it clean, and every beam of it was a thing she'd actually done, turned 90 degrees. She'd asked to see the vendor list, control. She'd stayed calm in the hallway. Cold. She'd taken a photograph. Surveillance. A truthful person defending herself would knock every one of these down and, knocking them down, look exactly like the woman they described. Too invested, too sharp, too much. Whoever had done this understood her. That was the part that sat like a stone. It wasn't Celeste. Celeste didn't think in beams. It was Adrian, and Adrian had been measuring her for longer than 3 days. She sat in her studio Sunday night and read the version of herself being assembled without her, sentence by sentence, in a family group she was still technically part of. Every true thing she'd noticed had been turned inside out and handed back to her as a symptom. The vendor list Adrian had sent in her name, now proof she controlled him. The photograph she'd taken, now proof she was surveilling. Her stillness in the hallway, she hadn't mentioned it, but somehow they knew she'd been there and hadn't spoken. And even that was evidence. Cold, calculating, not right in the head. Her mother called at 9. Mireia, no warmth now. The pride was gone, spent on someone else. I need you to hear me. I'm listening. You need some time, away from all of us. You're not, baby, you're not well. Adrian is worried sick. Your sister is beside herself. My sister, don't. Sharp. Don't do the thing where you make it about her. This is about you and how you've been. We think, the family thinks, it's best if you don't come around for a while. Until you're steady. Mireia looked at the folder on her desk. The Haniel contract, her name in the font she'd chosen. You want me to leave. A pause on the line, long enough to be an answer. We want you to get help, her mother said. Mireia set the phone down on the desk, face up, still connected, her mother's voice going small and tinny in the quiet studio. She looked at the 2 things in front of her. The contract that said she was worth more than 3 larger firms, and the phone that said, in her own mother's voice, that she was too much, that she'd always been too much, that the family had voted and she'd lost. She picked the phone back up. Okay, she said. Okay? Her mother sounded thrown. She'd braced for a fight. The fight was the proof. Okay, Mireia said again, and hung up before she could give her anything more to use. Then she sat alone in the light of the one lamp, in the studio she'd built from a rented desk, and she let herself feel exactly 1 minute of it. She timed it. 60 seconds, the heat behind her eyes, the folding in her chest, the whole weight of a family closing its door. At 61 seconds she stood. She put the Haniel folder in her bag, in the pocket with the zipper, next to the photograph nobody wanted to see. She turned off the lamp. She had $80,000 clearing Monday, a flagship contract with her name on it, a wedding to cancel, and nowhere in the world that was still called home. She would need coffee. There was a small cafe 2 streets over, the one with the woman who kept it open late, the one she'd walked past 100 times without going in. She locked the studio behind her and went looking for somewhere to sit that wasn't anyone's table but her own. The cafe door stuck for half a second before it gave, and the little brass bell over it rang louder than Mireia wanted anything to be. She stepped inside anyway. Warm air. The smell of roasted beans and something with cinnamon still going in the back. 6 small tables, most of them empty, 1 lamp burning low over the counter. She let the door shut behind her and stood there with her bag against her hip and no plan past the next 10 minutes. A woman looked up from the register. Short, sturdy, a cream apron over a slate blue blouse, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain. She had a nurse's watch pinned to her chest, the kind that faced upside down so only she could read it. She took Mireia in once, top to bottom, the way people did when they had spent years reading bodies for what the mouth wouldn't say. We close in an hour, the woman said, but the machine's still hot. Coffee, Mireia said, black, whatever's fastest. Sit anywhere. She picked the table in the corner, the one furthest from the window, the one where the streetlight didn't reach. She set the bag on the chair beside her and put her hand flat on the zipper pocket without meaning to. The folder was still there. The photo was still there. She had checked 3 times on the 2-block walk, and she checked again now. The woman brought the cup over herself, set it down, didn't leave right away. "You've walked past this place," she said. "Lots of times. Never came in. I've been busy." The woman's eyes went to the bag, to the hand on the zipper, then back up. She didn't ask. "I'm Da-yoon. You need anything else? I'm at the counter." She went. Maria was grateful for it. She wrapped both hands around the cup and did not drink. The heat came through the ceramic and into her palms, and that was the first thing she had felt in 4 hours that she could name. She had made it the whole way without crying. Through the bank Friday, through the studio, through the dinner, through her mother's voice on the phone saying the family had decided. She had spent exactly 60 seconds on the floor of her own studio and gotten up on the 61st. She had thought that was the worst of it, the getting up. It wasn't. The worst of it was this: a stranger's cafe at night, a cup she couldn't drink, and the sudden animal understanding that there was nowhere she had to be tomorrow. No dinner to dress for. No apartment to go home to. No mother to call. 3 years she had built the thing that made her someone, and in 48 hours, the people who shared her blood had renamed her into someone they could leave behind. Her chin went first. It always did. She pressed her lips together, and it didn't hold. The tears came without sound. She was good at that part, at least. Years of boardrooms had taught her how to fall apart quietly, how to keep her shoulders still while her face did what it wanted. She looked down at the table so the lamp wouldn't catch her eyes and let it happen. She didn't hear the man at the next table until he moved. He was there when she came in, she realized now, though she had walked right past him. A table against the far wall, papers spread out under the second lamp, a laptop closed to one side. He had been so still she'd read him as furniture. Now he shifted, reached for something, and the wheel of his chair caught the leg of his table and knocked it 2 inches sideways. That was all it took. The stack at the edge slid. Papers went across the floor between them, a fan of white and pale blue spreading under her chair. A pen rolled and stopped against her shoe. "I'm sorry," she said, already down, already reaching. Reflex. 29 years of being the one who fixed the room. She was on her knees before she thought about it, gathering pages, squaring them against the floor with the side of her hand. "Leave it," the man said. She didn't. Her hands kept moving. A supplier schedule, a cost sheet, a contract with the pages numbered in the corner. She stacked them fast, the way she stacked her own, and her eyes did what a designer's eyes always do, which is read the thing in front of them whether or not they mean to. Hanul. The word sat at the top of a contract in the middle of the stack. Hanul Hospitality Group, and under it, in the vendor line, a name she had built letter by letter 3 years ago at a rented desk. Her own studio's name, on a supplier contract she had never seen. Her hand stopped. She was still on her knees. The page was 6 inches from her face, and she read the vendor line twice, then a third time, the way she had read her mother's messages twice, for the architecture of them. Her studio, listed as a supplier. Not the design contract she'd signed at 4 o'clock Friday, the one folded in the zipper pocket against her hip. A different document, a supply arrangement, with routing, with 3 intermediary names she did not recognize, threaded between her studio and the money. 3 names. She knew the shape of 3 names. She had heard about 3 names at 10 o'clock Friday morning from 2 junior designers who told her Adrian had called the front line and rerouted her suppliers through people he'd flagged, telling them she'd approved it. She hadn't approved anything. She had told herself she'd fix it after the signing. Here they were, not on her studio's letterhead, on Hanul's. "That one," the man said, "you can hand to me." She looked up. He had not moved to help her. and she understood now it was not rudeness. He was in a chair, a low black one, matte, the kind built for a body that used it hard and daily, not the kind wheeled out of a hospital closet. He sat with his shoulders square and his hands loose on the armrests, and watched her with dark eyes that were half-lidded and entirely awake. The collar of his shirt was open at the throat, no tie, and up the left side of his neck, uncovered, ran ink she couldn't unsee once she'd seen it. A tiger, white, coiling from the collarbone toward the jaw, tail low, head lifted. She held out the page. She did not let go of it fast enough. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed the way she noticed things, which was to say completely and without appearing to. "You read it," he said. Not a question. "I stacked it." She kept her voice even. Boardroom, even. "I stack things." "You stopped on the third page." She had. She set the rest of the stack on his table and kept her back straight and her hands where he could see them. And she understood that in the space of 90 seconds, this had stopped being a night she was surviving and become a night that was going to matter. "Someone spilled your work on the floor," she said. "I picked it up. That's the whole story." "No," he said, "it isn't." Da-Wun's voice came from the counter, easy, unbothered, the voice of a woman who had seen this table hold worse. "Seo-jun, let her drink her coffee." He didn't look away from Mireya. "In a minute, Da-Wun." So he had a name, Seo-jun. And the woman with the nurse's watch said it the way you say a name you've said 10,000 times, with the sand worn off it. Mireya got up off her knees. She sat back in her chair. Her coffee had stopped steaming. She wrapped her hands around it again, because she needed her hands to be doing something that wasn't shaking. "The vendor on the third page," she said. Slow, testing the floor before she put weight on it. "You'd know who that is." "I know every vendor in that folder." "Then you know it's a design studio. Branding, hospitality." She lifted her eyes to him. "Not a supplier. It doesn't supply anything. It can't be on a supply contract. Whoever put it there for a reason that isn't design." Something moved behind his face. Not surprise. Recognition, maybe, the way a man recognizes a sound he's been listening for. "You know the studio," he said. "I know the industry." "That's not what I asked." He leaned forward 2 inches, and the tiger on his neck caught the lamp. "Do you know the studio?" One question, precise, the way a scalpel is precise, opening exactly the line he wanted, and nothing on either side of it. No warmth in it. No pity in it either, and she noticed that, the absence of pity, the way you'd notice the absence of a weight you'd been braced to carry. Everyone who had looked at her in the last 2 days had looked at her with pity, or with the performance of it. Her mother, Celeste. The pity was how they moved her out of the room. This man looked at her like a problem he wanted solved. It was, God help her, the kindest thing anyone had done for her all week. She could lie. She was good at it now. She'd learned that too this week. That she could sit at a table and toast to family with a photograph burning in her phone. She could say no, she didn't know the studio, finish her cold coffee, walk out into 12 degrees she wouldn't feel, and let this be a thing that happened once in a cafe she'd never enter again. She looked at the folder on his table, at the name she'd bled to build sitting in a line where it did not belong, wired between 3 men she'd never met, on a document she'd never signed, for a company she'd shaken hands with at noon on the worst Friday of her life. Whoever built this understood her. That was the thought that decided it. The same thought she'd had reading her mother's messages. This was made by someone who'd studied her, someone who knew she'd sign the design contract and never think to ask what else her name was doing. "It's mine," she said. He went still in a different way than before, the stillness of a man rearranging something large and quiet inside himself. "Say that again." "The studio on your third page. It's mine. I own it." I built it. Her voice didn't shake, and she was proud of that. Distantly, the way you're proud of a hand that keeps working after you've cut it. I signed a contract with Hanul this Friday. Design, lead design on the flagship hotel. My name, my work, 1 page. She nodded at the folder. I have never seen that document in my life, and I don't supply anything to anyone. Da-eun had come around the counter now, drying her hands on the apron, watching the two of them the way she'd watch a wound she was deciding whether to clean or stitch. She didn't speak. Neither did Seo-jun, not for a long moment. Then he closed the folder, slid it under his forearm on the table, out of her sight, and she felt the loss of it like a door shutting. "What's your name?" he said. "Mireya Sinclair." Mireya Sinclair. He said it the way you say a fact you're filing, not the way you say a name you're charmed by. You came in here to cry over coffee, and you found your name on a paper you weren't supposed to see. You know what that usually means when someone finds a thing like that? No, it means they weren't supposed to leave. He said it flat, without threat, as a piece of information she should have. You should understand that before you say another word. Whatever you think you walked into tonight, you walked in deeper than the coffee. She held his eyes. She was too tired to be afraid, and something in her had already decided that a man who told you the depth of the water before you stepped in was not the man who meant to drown you. "I've had a long 2 days," she said. "Somebody I trusted spent 3 weeks making the people who love me believe I'm the dangerous one. He rerouted my suppliers through 3 names I'd never heard, told my staff I'd signed off on it, and I hadn't." She tipped her head at his forearm, at the hidden folder. 3 names. You want to tell me I found something I shouldn't have? I think I found the first true thing anyone's shown me since Friday afternoon. Da-eun made a small sound at that, not quite a word. She pulled out the 3rd chair at Seo-jun's table and sat, slowly, the way a woman sits who has been on her feet since morning, and looked at Mireya with a new attention. "Adrian," Seo-jun said. Mireya's hands went cold around the cup. She had not said the name. She had said, "Somebody? He." A man who studied her. She had been careful, boardroom careful, the way she was careful about everything now. She had not said Adrian. "How do you know that name?" she said. He didn't answer that. He looked at Da-eun, and something passed between them that had years in it, and then he looked back at Mireya, and did not soften, and did not apologize. 3 names on a Hanul supplier contract, he said, routed through a studio that doesn't supply anything, is not a mistake somebody made about you. It's a thing somebody built with you in it. You're not the one who did it, but right now, on paper, you're the one it's easiest to hang it on. He let that sit. You understand what I'm telling you. You're telling me it's worse than a wedding I have to cancel. I'm telling you the wedding was the small part. The bell over the door had gone quiet an hour ago in her memory, and the lamp over the counter buzzed faintly, and outside a car went past, throwing light across the ceiling and taking it away. Mireya sat very still and felt the ground she thought she'd lost. The apartment, the mother, the sister, the man, rearrange itself into something she hadn't understood she was standing on. She'd thought Friday was betrayal, a sister in her bed, a family that chose the liar. She was starting to understand that the betrayal was the cover story, that somewhere under it was a machine, and her name was a part in it, bolted in before she ever knew the machine existed. "Who are you?" she said. He considered her, the tiger held still on his neck. Da-eun watched him decide, and Mireya understood that whatever he said next was a choice he was making in real time, about her, about how much of the water to show her. "My name is Han Seo-jun," he said. "People who need a name for me use another one. You don't need it yet." He drew the folder an inch further under his arm. "What you need is to finish that coffee, Go somewhere tonight that isn't anywhere he'd look, and come back here tomorrow at 10. Yoon opens at 7. I'll be at this table. And if I don't come back, then you found something you shouldn't have, he said, and you'll spend the next month watching it done to you, and never know why until it's finished. Yoon stood. She took Mireya's cold cup without asking, and carried it to the machine and made another, and set it down steaming, and put her hand on Mireya's shoulder once, briefly, the touch of a woman who had held a great many people while they understood a terrible thing. The last one you let go cold. Mireya wrapped her hands around it. The heat came through. She looked at the man in the black chair with the tiger on his neck, and her own name locked under his arm, and for the first time since a Friday afternoon that had ended her one life, she was not being asked to leave a room. She was being told to come back. 10 o'clock, she said. He nodded once and turned back to his papers, and the conversation was over the way a door is closed, completely and without unkindness. She stayed until she finished the second cup. Then she took her bag, felt for the zipper pocket one last time, the folder, the photo, and let herself out into the cold she still couldn't feel. Behind her, the bell rang once. She did not walk back toward the apartment, or the studio, or her mother's house. She walked the other way, toward a cheap hotel 3 streets over, whose sign she'd passed 100 times without reading, and for the first time all week she had somewhere to be at 10. The brass bell over the cafe door was still swinging when Mireya stepped inside at 9:52. Seojun was already at the same table by the far wall. A second chair had been pulled out for her, angled so her back would face the room and not the glass. He'd done that on purpose. She understood the gesture before she sat. "You came," he said, not surprise. A note taken. "You said 10. She set her bag on her lap, the zippered pocket pressed against her stomach. "I'm early." Dain brought coffee without being asked and left it steaming between them. The folder from last night lay closed under Seojun's forearm. He slid it 2 inches toward her, then stopped, as if the distance itself were a question. "Before I open this," he said, "I want to be clear about one thing. I am not offering you help." Mireya waited. Help is what people give when they feel sorry. I don't feel sorry for you. He turned the folder so the label faced her. "I'm offering you work." She almost laughed. 2 days of being handled, pitied, walked around like broken glass, and the first man to look at her without softness was a stranger in a wheelchair who knew her ex-fiancé's name and wouldn't say how. "Work," she repeated. "The Hanuel flagship needs a lead designer for the guest floors and the public spaces, lobby, restaurants, the whole brand language of the interior." He opened the folder now. Inside was a spec sheet, dense with room counts and square footage. "The contract you signed Friday put your name on it. I want the person who earned that name doing the actual work. I already have that contract." "You have a contract," Adrian was routing around. He tapped the supplier document beneath the spec sheet, the one with her studio buried in 3 intermediary names. "That's 2 different things. One is real, one is a leash. I'm cutting the leash." Mireya looked at the numbers. The flagship was bigger than anything she'd touched. 240 keys, 4 restaurants, a spa level she'd only heard about in the procurement call. Her studio had been chosen above 3 larger firms. She still didn't fully believe why. "Why me?" she said. "Really? Because you saw the 3rd page last night in the time it takes most people to pick up a pen." He closed his hand loosely on the table. "You read a laundering structure off the floor of a cafe while you were crying. I don't hire people who need things explained twice." The word laundering landed and sat there. He'd said it plainly, the way Dayoon set down a cup. "You're saying it out loud now," Mireya said. "I said the shape of it last night. Now I'm telling you the terms." He met her eyes. "You work the design, real credit, real money, more than the refinance you're carrying, and it clears independent of anything Adrian can freeze. In exchange, you keep reading. Every document that crosses your desk on this project, you read it the way you read the floor. And what do you get? I get someone inside the paperwork who has a reason to care what it says. She turned the spec sheet over. On the back, someone had penciled a corridor of vendor names. The legitimate suppliers, the real ones, the ones Adrian had displaced. You already know the whole thing, she said. You don't need me to read anything, so why put me in it? For the first time, he was slow to answer. Doan crossed behind the counter, and the nurse's watch on her chest caught the light. Because knowing isn't the same as being able to use it, Seojun said finally. I can see the machine. I can't be the one who signed the papers to take it apart. You can. He let that stand. You're not a witness I'm protecting. And you're the only person who can walk into a room and belong there. The chair, then. The reason he stayed at tables and let papers fall rather than chase them. He didn't say it. He didn't have to. She'd already clocked the wheels last night, the real wear on them, the way he never once asked her to notice. You want me visible, she said. Adrian built a story where I'm the dangerous one. You want to put me in the middle of his own operation. I want you doing your job. A pause. The rest is a consequence he didn't plan for. Maria drank the coffee. It was good. She'd been too gone last night to taste it. Say I do this. What stops him from routing around me again? Seojun slid a single sheet from the back of the folder. A floor plan of the flagship's procurement chain, redrawn. Clean. Her studio at the top. No intermediaries. The 3 names gone. I already pulled them, he said. As of this morning, your studio contracts direct with Hanyul. The vendors he inserted don't have standing on this project anymore. She stared at it. Overnight, he'd unstitched in hours what Adrian had spent weeks sewing. You can do that. On this building, yes. On this building. She caught the edge of it. How many buildings are there? He almost smiled. It didn't reach far, but it was the first real thing his face had done. Now you're reading me instead of the papers. Da-eun came by and refilled without a word, and Mireya noticed the older woman's hand rested a half-second on the back of Seojun's chair as she passed. The touch of someone who'd earned the right and used it rarely. She filed it and said nothing. I need to know one thing before I say yes, Mireya said. Ask. Last night you said Adrian's name. I never told you. If I'm going to work for you, I don't work blind. How do you know him? The cafe clock ticked. Seojun turned his coffee a quarter turn on the saucer. Adrian Vale has been trying to move money through Hanyul-owned property for a year and a half, he said. Not my decision who Hanyul does business with, but I watch what touches the buildings. His name came across my desk, long before it came across yours. He looked at her. You didn't bring Adrian into my world. He was already in it. You walked into the part of it he built to hide behind. It should have made her feel smaller. Instead, something in her chest went still and cold and clear, the way it did in a negotiation when the other side finally showed a real card. So the engagement, she said slowly. The wedding, Celeste? I don't know the inside of your family, Seojun said. I know the money, and the money says your marriage was a door he needed open. He closed the folder. You were going to be very useful to him. You're worth more to me telling the truth than you were to him telling a lie. Mireya set down the cup. Somewhere under the shock, a thin, ugly satisfaction was uncoiling. That after 2 days of being the crazy one, the unstable one, there was a room where her competence was the whole point. Terms, she said. Say them again. All of them. He laid it out flat, no flourish. Lead designer of record on the flagship interior. Fee structured in 3 payments. First on signature. None of it flowing through any account Adrian could reach. A studio she'd contract as principal, direct with Hanyul, and one condition on his side. Anything she found, she brought to him first, before she brought it to anyone. "Before I bring it to who?" she said. "Before you bring it to a lawyer, to the police, to your mother." His eyes didn't move. "Not to control you, because if you move too early, you hand Adrian the thing he wants, proof you're reckless. He's already writing that story. Don't sign his ending for him." She thought about the photograph in the zippered pocket, the one she'd almost thrown on the dinner table Friday night and hadn't, because she'd understood, even then, that a true thing dropped at the wrong second becomes a weapon in the other hand. "That I already know," she said quietly. "I thought you might." Daun came out from behind the counter with a small plate. A slice of pound cake, unasked for, set at Mireya's elbow. "You didn't eat," she said. Not a question either. She had the same instinct as the man across the table. Read the person, skip the pity, hand them the thing they need. Mireya wondered, not for the first time, what the two of them were to each other. She didn't ask. There'd be a page for that later. "I'll do it," Mireya said. Seo-jun didn't celebrate. He turned the contract around. A fresh one, printed clean, her studio direct, the fee laid out in 3 lines. He set a pen beside it, not the pen that had rolled to her shoe last night. A different one. "Read it first," he said. "All of it. I'll wait." So she read it. Every clause, the way he'd hired her to read. It was clean, suspiciously clean, for a man who lived in a world of leashes. She looked up. "There's no clause binding me to you past the project." "No. You could have written one. I could have written a lot of things." He folded his hands. "A contract that traps you is the kind Adrian writes." "I'm trying to be the other thing." She signed. Her real name, her real studio, on a page that was hers. When she lifted the pen, the relief was physical. A loosening behind the ribs she hadn't known was clenched since Friday afternoon. "When do I start?" "You already did." He drew out one more sheet, the flagship's current design brief, the one 3 larger firms had submitted for and lost. "The developers' people want a direction by Thursday. The last team gave them a mood board full of gold and marble. Empty. Expensive and empty." Mireya scanned it. Her hands moved before her mind caught up, turning the brief sideways, finding the room count, the guest demographic, the site, a waterfront parcel, North Light, a city that already had too much gold and marble. "They don't need opulence," she said, half to herself. "They need somewhere that feels like it remembers you." She looked up and caught him watching her, the way you watch a machine turn over and start. "What?" "Nothing," he said. That's the sentence the other 3 firms didn't have. For 20 minutes, she forgot the photograph, the dinner, her mother's voice on the phone. She talked floor plates and sightlines, and how a lobby should make a person exhale. And Seo-jun listened the way no one had listened to her in weeks, not waiting for her to finish so he could reframe her, just taking in what she actually said. She pulled the brief closer and started marking it, not with a pen, with her finger, tracing the guest path from the water to the front desk. The mistake the other firms made, she said, was designing the lobby to be photographed. You design it to be walked through. The photograph takes care of itself, if the walk is right. Explain. A person arrives tired, off a plane, off a fight, off a bad year. She didn't look up. She didn't notice she'd said it. The first 30 seconds of a lobby either tells them the building will hold them, or it tells them to keep performing. Gold tells you to perform. I want the first thing they feel to be that they can put the bag down. Seo-jun was silent long enough that she finally looked up. That's the direction, he said. That's a feeling. They asked for a direction. They asked for gold and marble because they don't know how to ask for the feeling. Give them the feeling and let them think it was their idea. He turned the brief a fraction toward himself, reading her marks. You've done this before. For who? Boutiques. A 12-room inn upstate that everyone said would fail. She allowed herself the smallest edge of pride. It didn't fail. I know. It's why your name was on the shortlist above 3 firms with 10 times your staff. He said it as fact, not flattery, and somehow that made it land harder. The procurement officer didn't pick you because you were cheap. He picked you because the inn was the only submission where the reviewers wanted to stay the night. She hadn't known that. Someone in a room she'd never entered had defended her work while her own family was drafting the word unstable. The 2 facts sat side by side and refused to reconcile. You keep telling me things I earned, she said. 2 days ago, everyone was telling me things I ruined. One of us is doing the math wrong. He turned his coffee again. It isn't me. The heat that went through her wasn't attraction, or she told herself it wasn't. It was the specific relief of being measured correctly, and she was starving for it, in a way that frightened her more than the machine did. She looked at the tiger inked up the side of his neck, at the calm, heavy-lidded patience of a man who never raised his voice because he'd never had to, and made herself look back down at the brief. When she caught herself, she stopped, embarrassed by her own momentum. Sorry. Don't. He said it fast. That's what I bought. The bell over the door rang. A courier, not for them. But Mireya's whole body had turned to the sound before she registered it. The 2-day reflex of someone waiting to be ambushed. Seo Jun saw it. That'll fade, he said. The flinching. Does it fade for you? She hadn't meant to ask. The scar through his eyebrow, the wheels, the way he'd chosen the chair that put her back to the room. She'd assembled it without deciding to. He was quiet a moment. No, he said. You just stop letting them see it. Da-Dun cleared the empty plate. Outside, the light had shifted. Morning had turned into the flat, bright middle of the day, and Mireya realized she'd been in the cafe almost 2 hours and hadn't looked at the street once. There's something else, Seo Jun said, and the change in his voice made her set down the pen for good. Adrian will send you paperwork. Soon, maybe today. He doesn't know yet that I pulled his vendors. When he finds out, he'll move fast to get your signature on something new before you understand what changed. What kind of paperwork? Settlement, probably. Dissolution of the shared apartment. Something that looks like an ex-fiancé being reasonable. He held her eyes. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like, don't sign anything he sends. Not 1 page. Bring it here. You said that already. First, to you. I'm saying it sharper now, because he's about to try. He slid the folder fully to his side of the table, hers to keep, his to guard. A man who builds a story where you're unstable needs you to keep acting inside it. The fastest way to break the story is to stop signing what he hands you. Mireya gathered her bag. The new contract went into the zippered pocket, next to the photograph and the design folder. 3 pages that were finally, all of them, hers. Thursday, she said. You'll have a direction. I know. She was at the door, hand on the brass, when Da-Dun spoke from the counter, without looking up from the cups. He hasn't hired anyone in 3 years, the older woman said, in case you were wondering what this is. Mireya glanced back at the table. Seo Jun had already opened the folder again, back to the papers. The conversation closed the way he closed everything, cleanly, before she could add anything to it. Then her phone buzzed against her hip. An unknown number. No name, no greeting, just 1 line on the screen that she read standing in the doorway with the bell still humming over her head. Don't sign anything Adrian sends you. She looked up. Seo Jun hadn't touched his phone. It sat face down beside the folder, exactly where it had been for 2 hours. Somebody else knew. Mireya read the text a 3rd time on the sidewalk, thumb hovering over the screen, then turned around and walked back into the cafe. The brass bell rang again behind her. Seo Jun looked up from the folder, as if he had expected the bell before it sounded. She crossed to the wall table and set the phone face up between them. Who else has my number? She said. He read the line without touching the phone. Daeun did the same over his shoulder, drying a cup with a cloth she had stopped moving. Something passed between the two of them that Mireya could not name, only measure. The way you measure a door by the draft under it. Sit, Seojun said. I'm asking who. I don't know who. He turned the phone back toward her, screen still lit. That's the true answer, and it's the one that should worry you. There are 3 people who wanted you to stay engaged to Adrian. There is now at least one who wants you to stop signing his paper. Those are not the same person. Mireya sat. The second chair was still angled the way he'd set it that morning, her back to the room. She turned it 4 inches so she could see both the door and his hands. He noticed the 4 inches. He said nothing about them. Daeun set a fresh cup in front of Mireya and did not go back to the counter. She pulled out the 3rd chair, the one nobody had used in 2 days, and lowered herself into it slowly, one hand on the tabletop, the other on the small watch pinned to her chest, as if to keep it from swinging. You should tell her, Daeun said, in English, then something short in Korean, quieter, only for him. Seojun held the older woman's gaze for a moment. Then he closed the design folder and slid it toward Mireya's side of the table, and pulled the other one, the supply contract folder, the one he'd kept under his forearm since Sunday night, into the space in front of himself. You keep asking how I know his name, he said. You've asked twice. You'll ask a 3rd time, and I'd rather you stop asking and start reading. He opened the supply folder. The pages were the ones she'd knelt to gather 2 nights ago. Vendor schedule, cost sheet, the numbered contract with her studio's name on the vendor line. But there were more now. 4 documents she hadn't seen Sunday, tucked behind the first 3, the corners still crisp. I pulled these after you left last night, he said. From the building file, not from Adrian. He doesn't know they're out. Mireya reached for the first page. He let her. It was an invoice. Her studio letterhead, her own logo, the one she'd drawn at a rented desk 3 years ago, the small angular bird she'd inked over and over until it stopped looking like anything and started looking like hers. Underneath it, a bill for $840,000 in consulting and procurement services to a company called Sunmark Atelier, dated 4 months back. She had never billed anyone $840,000. She had never heard of Sunmark Atelier. Turn it over, Seojun said. On the back, a payment confirmation. The money had moved from Sunmark to her studio account, an account number she recognized because it was hers, and then out again, 90% of it, 3 days later, to a numbered entity registered to a mailing address she would learn, in about a minute, sat inside a Hanul building. That's not mine, she said. Her voice came level. She was proud of that, and hated that she noticed. The account is mine. That transaction isn't. I know you didn't. He put a second page beside the first. That's the point of it. It happened through you. On paper, you took nearly $1 million, kept a fee, and passed the rest to a shell. 11 times. Over 14 months. 11. She fanned the pages before she could stop herself. 11 invoices. Her bird on all of them. 11 times money had walked in her front door and out her back while she sat at her desk designing a hotel lobby she thought was the biggest honest thing she'd ever built. 14 months, she said. Started a month after you got engaged. The cafe was quiet enough that she could hear the espresso machine ticking as it cooled. She set the pages down and flattened them with her palm, slowly, the way you smooth a contract before you sign it, and the gesture felt obscene now, a habit turned into evidence. He needed the front, Seojun said. A real business with real clients and a clean founder. Yours was perfect. Hospitality branding moves money between developers and suppliers all day. Nobody blinks at an invoice from a design studio. He didn't steal your company. He borrowed your face. He proposed to borrow my face. He proposed so the accounts would join. Seojun said it flatly, no weight added, and the flatness was worse than emphasis. Married, your studio and his holdings share a wall. He moves what he likes, and if it ever surfaces, it surfaces on your side of the wall. The engagement wasn't the crime. It was the paperwork for the crime. Mireya thought of the refinance. $80,000, cleared Monday, tying the whole studio to a rate that only held if Hanul closed. She thought of how neatly that debt would sit on top of 11 fraudulent invoices when someone went looking. A woman drowning in a bad loan, moving suspicious money, motive built in. He set the loan up too, she said, not a question. He steered you to the bank, you did the rest yourself, honestly, which is why it's clean. He almost smiled and didn't. Everything you did for real. That's what makes it stick to you. There's no forgery on your side. There's just you, working, and the numbers arranged around the work. She looked at the invoices again. She wanted to find the seam, the one wrong font, the signature that wasn't hers. She looked hard. There was a signature, on the 7th page, on a services agreement between her studio and Sunmark Atelier. Her name, in her own hand, the tall M, the flat Y she'd written the same way since she was 19. Her stomach dropped, somewhere below the floor. "That's mine," she whispered. "That's my signature. I signed this." "You signed a stack," Seojun said. "You remember signing a stack?" She did. God help her, she did. Adrian at the kitchen island, a Sunday, coffee going cold, a folder 2 inches thick. Vendor NDAs, he'd said. Standard, boring, 40 of them. The Hanul lawyers want them before the design contract can move. She'd been 3 weeks from a wedding and a career-making deal, and she'd trusted the man she was going to marry. And she'd signed 40 pages, while he named each one, and none of the names were true. She had signed it. Her hand had made the mark. That was the part that would hold in any room in the world. "I signed it," she said again. Dawoon's hand moved from her own chest to Mireya's forearm. Once, the same weight she'd put on her shoulder Sunday night. She didn't say it's all right. She was a woman who had clearly spent a life not lying to people about whether things were all right. "Now you understand why I said you're the one who can undo it," Seojun said. "Not me. I can see the whole machine. I can't touch the papers. Every one of them has your name where a name has to be, and none of them have mine anywhere. If I move against Adrian, I'm a man with a grievance touching documents that belong to you. If you move, you're the founder correcting her own record. Only your hand fits the lock, because he built the lock around your hand." Mireya sat with that. The espresso machine ticked. Outside, a bus sighed at the corner and pulled away. "How do you see the whole machine?" she said. "You keep standing outside it looking in. Ordinary landlords don't pull building files at night." He was quiet. Dawoon took her hand off Mireya's arm and folded both hands in her lap and looked at him, and this time the look was not a question. It was permission, offered to him, to do a thing she thought he should have done already. "Tell her the cafe part," Dawoon said. "It's mine to give, and I'm giving it." Seojun set his palm flat on the closed supply folder. 4 years ago, my father was killed, he said. An ambush. Cars, a garage ramp, men who'd been paid to be in the right place. I was in the second car. I got out with this. He tipped his head a fraction toward the chair beneath him, not toward the tattoo, not toward the scar, just the low black frame he sat in. And I got out because a nurse, who was 2 streets away, came running toward the noise instead of away from it. Most people run away from that sound. She ran at it. Mireya turned to Dawoon. Dawoon met her eyes and did not perform modesty. "I was coming off a night shift," she said. 22 years on the floor. Your hands don't ask you first at that point. They just go. She kept me from bleeding out on a parking ramp for 11 minutes before anyone else came, Seojun said. Then she quit the hospital because the hospital started getting calls from people who wanted to know which patient she'd saved, so I bought her a cafe. Not as a gift, as a fact. She keeps it. I sit here. This table is the one place in the city where I know who's paid to be in the room. Maria looked around the 6 small tables, the brass bell, the machine, the worn watch on the older woman's chest that she now understood was a nurse's watch, kept because you keep the tool that was in your hand the day your hands went by themselves. This is the safest table in the city, she said slowly, and I knocked a folder off it by accident. You didn't knock it off by accident. Seo Jun's mouth moved, the real smile now, brief. I moved the chair, the wheel caught the leg. I've had that folder for a month, waiting for a reason to open it in front of the one person whose name is on every page. You walked in crying 2 streets from where you'd just been thrown out of your own life. I decided to give the folder a nudge. The floor tilted a degree under her. You planned this. I made a choice fast, he said. There's a difference, and you of all people know it. I didn't build the trap you're standing in. Adrian did, over 14 months. I saw you fall into a chair in Dagun's cafe, and I decided in about 4 seconds that I'd rather you knew than didn't. If you'd left Sunday and never come back at 10, the machine ran with you inside it, and you found out in a courtroom. Instead, you found out at this table, with the file open, with a job and money that Adrian can't freeze. He tapped the design folder on her side. That's not a trap. That's the first door anyone's held open for you in 3 weeks. She wanted to be angry. She reached for it the way she'd reached for the wrong font. It wasn't there. What was there was colder and steadier, and far more useful, the specific calm of a woman who has just seen the actual shape of the thing that has been eating her, and found it finite, big, but finite, with edges, with 11 invoices she could count on 2 hands. It was never just an affair. She'd known that since Sunday night, when he said the casamento era a parte pequeña, but knowing a sentence and holding the invoices were different weights, and now she held the weight. Celeste, she said. Seo Jun waited. He didn't cheat on me with my sister because he wanted my sister. Mireya heard herself lay it out and did not stop. He needed the engagement broken at the right moment, before the accounts joined, before I could see across the wall. A clean man doesn't call off a wedding 3 weeks out. That invites questions. But a woman who finds him in bed with her sister walks away, and everyone believes the story about her. He used Celeste to blow up the thing he built, on his schedule, and made me the one who left. She looked at the anonymous text, still lit on the phone. Don't sign anything Adrian sends. Somebody who's close to him is sorry. Neither Seo Jun nor Da-in answered. She hadn't asked a question. She was reading the room now, not the papers, and they let her. He'll send me something, she said. You told me this morning. Dissolution of the apartment. Something that looks reasonable. And I'll have already pulled the vendors he needed, and he won't know yet. She stacked the 11 invoices square. How long until he knows the vendors moved? Days, Seo Jun said. A week if his people are lazy. When he knows, he stops being patient. Right now, he thinks you're a woman, crying in a cheap hotel. The day he learns the vendors are gone from the flagship, he learns you found a hand bigger than his. Then he does the thing he's been holding in reserve, which is, he burns the front. Seo Jun said it without drama. If he can't use you quietly, he uses you loudly. He hands the record to someone official, arranged so the 11 invoices point at you, and nothing points at him. He'd rather have you in a headline than have you free with a copy of these. Mireya looked down at the invoices under her flat hand, her bird on every one. So we're racing him, she said. You're racing him. I'm making sure the track is yours. He pulled a single sheet from under the folder and turned it toward her. A property record. A 12-story building, Hanul owned. An address she'd seen an hour ago on the back of an invoice. the mailing address of the shell that took 90% of her fake fees. Every dollar he moved through your studio came to rest in space he leases from me and doesn't know I own the shell above his. He laundered his money through a building I control. He's been hiding inside my house for a year and a half and paying rent to do it. Mireia lifted her eyes from the page. He doesn't know who you are. No one who needs a name for me uses the right one, Seo-jun said. You still don't have it. You're closer to needing it than you were Sunday. Da-eun rose, joints slow, and carried Mireia's cold first cup to the counter and came back with it hot, the trade she'd made twice now, and set it down and stayed standing this time, one hand on the back of Seo-jun's chair, the gesture Mireia had filed that morning and understood completely now. Mireia squared the 11 invoices one more time. She slid them, all of them, toward Seo-jun's side of the table. Copy them, she said. 2 copies. I keep one somewhere that isn't a hotel, and isn't the studio, and isn't anywhere Adrian would look. You keep one where you keep things. The originals stay in the building file so he doesn't know they moved. If he burns the front, I don't want to be the only person on earth holding the match that lights him back. For the first time since Sunday night, Seo-jun looked at her the way Da-eun had run at the sound, without hesitation, all the way in. That's the right instinct, he said. That's exactly what I'd have told you to do. I wanted to see if I'd have to. You didn't. Mireia stood. Her legs held. She picked up the design folder, her folder, the honest one, and zipped it into the inside pocket of her bag, beside the photograph she had not thought about once in the last 20 minutes, and now remembered, the pink strap, her sister's hand, the small guilty thing she'd photographed on the worst night of her life. She understood, standing at the table, that the photograph was never the story. The photograph was the door Adrian had held open for her to walk through, so she'd leave loud and be gone before she could count to 11. The design directions due Thursday, she said. You'll have it Wednesday. I said Thursday. I know what you said. She pulled the strap onto her narrow shoulder. I don't need 3 days to draw a lobby. I need 3 days for the other thing, and I want the lobby off my desk before I start it. She turned toward the door and stopped and turned back. The nurse who ran at the sound, she said to Da-eun, thank you for the cafe, and for the second coffee, both times. Da-eun's fine lines deepened. Drink this one before it goes cold, she said. You keep making me walk. Mireia drank it standing, the whole cup, and set it down, and this time, when the brass bell rang behind her, she was not running from anything. She stepped out into the cold she still couldn't feel, and stood on the sidewalk with a folder that was hers, 11 copies coming that weren't, and the exact shape of the machine, finally in her 2 hands. Her phone buzzed against her palm. Not the unknown number this time. A name. Adrian. 1 line. Warm. Reasonable. 3 weeks too late to be either. Hey, can we talk? I have some papers for the apartment. Nothing dramatic. Just clean it all up. Coffee tomorrow? Mireia stood very still on the sidewalk and read it twice, the way she read everything now, for the architecture. Then she looked back through the cafe glass at the man in the black chair, already bent over the folder, copying 11 pages of her own name, and she smiled the closed, asymmetric smile that had gotten her called cold by people who'd never once measured her right. He wanted coffee. He didn't know the vendors were gone yet. She had until he did. She got 2 days, not 1. Adrian's coffee message sat unanswered through Monday night. Mireia spent it in the cheap hotel 3 streets from the cafe, the design folder zipped in the inner pocket beside the photograph, 1 copy of the 11 invoices flat under the mattress, in a place that was not the studio, not her mother's, not anywhere Adrian had ever watched her put anything. She did not sleep much. She worked. By 4 in the morning she had the guest floor direction roughed in her head, the walk from the water to the desk, the drop-your-bag feeling, the 30 seconds that decide whether a building holds you. Wednesday delivery. She had told Seojun Wednesday, and she meant to keep the one promise nobody had rigged. Tuesday, she did not answer Adrian either. Silence was a move too. Let him wonder. Wednesday, she woke to her phone lit up like a switchboard. 41 notifications. Not messages. Alerts. The banking app first. A red banner she had never seen before her own account. Access restricted. She thumbed it open. Her business checking. The account whose number she recognized, because she had opened it herself 3 years ago from a rented desk, showed a hold on all outgoing transfers. Then the personal account. Then the refinance account, the $80,000 that was supposed to clear Monday and had cleared, sitting there, now frozen mid-breath. She sat up. The design folder was still under her hand. That was real. This was real too. She scrolled. A number she didn't know had left a voicemail at 6:12 a.m. She played it on speaker while she pulled her jeans on. A woman's voice, flat and careful. The voice of someone reading from a script written by lawyers. "Miss Sinclair, this is the compliance office at," and a bank name, and words she had used in other people's contracts without ever expecting them aimed at her. Suspicious activity, pattern of transactions, pending review, a request that she not attempt to move funds, a number to call that would only ring a queue. She did not call it. She got dressed. The second thing she learned from Celeste, of all people. A text, time-stamped 6:40, not the anonymous number. Celeste's own name, the sister who had gone quiet at the dinner table with a headache she did not have. 3 words. "It's everywhere. Call me." Then, a minute later, a link. Mireya's thumb hovered. She knew what opening it would do to the morning. She opened it anyway, because the woman who reads the whole contract does not stop at the page that comforts her. It was a post, not a newspaper, not yet, a finance and scandal account with a following in the hundreds of thousands, the kind that launders rumor into fact by the simple trick of publishing it in a serious font. The headline used her full name, Mireya Sinclair. Beneath it, the word the family had spent 48 hours planting 3 weeks ago, grown now into something with teeth. Not controlling, not unstable. Mastermind. The post laid it out clean. A boutique branding founder, it said, had allegedly run nearly $1 million through a design studio, functioning as a front, funneling developer money into shell entities, keeping a fee, passing the rest along. It named Sunmark Atelier. It named the studio. It showed, and here Mireya's hand went still on the phone, an image of a document. An invoice. Her angular bird in the corner, the mark she had drawn at 19 and refined at 26, printing itself now under a stranger's caption as evidence of a crime. But it was not the invoice she had copied. She zoomed. The numbers were wrong. The date was wrong. The routing line beneath, the line that in the real document sent 90% onward to a numbered shell inside a Hanyul building, that line had been edited. In the version she had photographed under the mattress, the money left her account and kept going. In this version, the money left and stopped. Stopped with her. The onward transfer was gone, cropped or painted out, so that on the page, it read as though she had received nearly $1 million and simply kept it. He had not leaked the truth. He had leaked a better lie built on the truth's bones. She understood it in the time it took the image to finish loading. Adrian had learned the vendors were gone. He had learned it faster than Seojun guessed. Days, Seojun had said. Maybe a week. It had taken him less than 2. And the moment he learned it, he had done exactly what Seojun said he would do. He stopped being patient, and he burned the facade. Only he had improved it first. He did not hand the real record to someone official. He handed a doctored one to everyone, all at once, in a font that looked like proof. Her phone rang in her hand. Denise, her mother. Mireya let it ring twice. She looked at the design folder on the bed, the one honest thing in the room, and she answered because not answering would be a kind of hiding, and she was finished hiding. "Mom, is it true?" Not a question, the way her mother said it. A verdict, wearing a question's clothes. "No, Mireya." The name came out tired, already grieving something. "It's on 3 different sites. There are documents. Your name is on documents. My mark is on documents. Someone put it there." A silence. In the silence, Mireya could hear the television going in the background, and under the television, another voice, low, male, calm, camera ready even at 7 in the morning. Adrian was in her mother's house. Adrian was standing in the kitchen where the Sunday NDAs had been signed on a different island, in a different life, and he was in her mother's house now, at breakfast, the picture of a man frightened for a family he had tried to save. "Is he there?" Mireya said. Her mother did not answer that either, which was its own answer. "He came over," Denise said finally. "He's worried sick. He's the one who told us before the internet did. He said he tried to protect you, that he saw the numbers months ago and he covered for you because he loved you, and now it's too big and he can't." "Stop." Mireya said it quietly, and it stopped her mother cold, because Mireya had never in her life used that voice on Denise. "Listen to me once. He didn't protect me. He built it around me. The signatures are real, because he handed me 40 pages one Sunday and called them vendor forms, and I trusted the man I was going to marry. The money didn't stay with me, it went through me. There is a version of that invoice that shows where it went next, and it goes to a building he rents, and I have it." Breathing on the line. Then, softer, worse. "Baby, that's exactly the kind of thing he said you'd say." The floor of the thing dropped out from under her right there. Not the accounts, not the post. This. That Adrian had gotten to the words before she could say them. That he had sat at her mother's table and preloaded the denial so that the truth, when it arrived in her own mouth, would sound like the script of a guilty woman. Every true thing she owned had been turned inside out 3 weeks ago. Asking for the supplier list became control. Staying calm in the hallway became cold. Now the last true thing, the evidence itself, had been turned before she could set it down. He'd said she'd claim a hidden transfer, so her hidden transfer sounded like a claim. "Where's Celeste?" Mireya said. "She's here. She's a wreck, Mireya. She's been crying since. Put her on. She can't right now. Put her on, Mom, or hang up." Rustling. A hand over a receiver. Muffled words she couldn't parse but could feel. A plea, a refusal. Adrian's calm underneath it like a hand on a shoulder. Then her mother's voice again, and it had cooled into something formal, something that had chosen. "I think you should get a lawyer, Mireya. I think you should stop calling here until this is sorted. Adrian says the best thing for everyone is if you don't make it worse. For all of us, the girls." Her mother's voice broke on the last part, and the break was real, and that was the cruelest thing in the whole morning. The grief was genuine. Denise was not lying. Denise had simply been given a true daughter and a false story and told to pick. And she had picked the story, because the story came with a calm man who explained things, and the daughter came with a red banner on a bank app. "Okay," Mireya said. The word she'd used on Sunday, 3 weeks and a lifetime ago, when the family first pushed her out. It had dismantled her mother then. It dismantled her again now. Denise had braced for a fight and gotten a closed door. "Mireya." She ended the call. She stood in the cheap hotel room with the phone in her hand and let herself feel exactly what it was. Not 60 seconds this time. She didn't have 60 seconds. She checked. 9 seconds of it, eyes shut, and then she opened them because the folder on the bed was due to a man across the city at a table by a wall, and she was not going to let Adrian take Wednesday too. She called Seo Jun. He answered on the first ring, which told her he already knew. "You've seen it," she said. "An hour ago, His voice was the same as always, low, without pity, and she had never been so grateful for the absence of a thing. The banks froze you first. That was a call from someone with standing. He didn't post it and hope. He seeded it official, then let the accounts do the confirming. By the time people read the story, your frozen accounts made it true. The invoice in the post is edited. The routing line's gone. It shows the money staying with me. I know. A pause. Dayun's opening. Come to the table. The flagship. She said it before she could not say it. Is it? Suspended this morning. The developer got the same alert everyone got. Legal put a hold on your contract of record until the noise clears. It's a hold, not a cancellation. But it reads to the world like they dropped you. She heard him exhale. The closest thing to anger she'd heard from him. He took the one clean thing you built this week and made it look like they fired you for cause. He's good. I've told you he's good. This is him being good. The flagship. Lead designer of record. 240 keys. 4 restaurants. The walk from the water she'd traced with one finger on the honest folder. Suspended. Every barrier Seo Jun had quietly pulled down on Monday, Adrian had rebuilt in a single morning, with a font and a phone call. Mireya, Seo Jun's voice. Are you still there? I'm here. What are you holding right now? She looked down. The design folder, the real one, a beat. The invoice copies under a mattress that isn't here. Good. Leave it there. Don't move it. Don't photograph it again. Don't tell anyone it exists. Not a lawyer, not your mother, not the sister who's crying. The second you wave it, he'll say you fabricated it. Right now, it's the one card he doesn't know for certain you have. She heard the scrape of a chair, the brass bell far away through the phone. Come to the table, bring the design. The design. She almost laughed, and it came out wrong. They suspended the contract, Seo Jun. There's no floor to hand a direction for. Deliver it anyway. Why? Because a woman who spends the morning her accounts froze, and her mother chose against her sitting down to finish the guest floor walk, is not a woman who stole $1 million. His voice didn't rise. It won't clear you. Nothing today clears you. But it's the record. Everything he's built is paper that says you're a thief. I want paper that says you were working. When this turns, and it turns, the story isn't, she denied it. The story is, she kept designing the building while they burned her in it. That's not for the internet. That's for the room where it ends. Bring me the folder. She stood very still. Outside the thin window, the city was already loud with a Wednesday that did not know or care that her name was a headline. 12 degrees. Colder now than the Sunday she couldn't feel. She could feel this. That was almost a relief. The cold, the specific concrete edges of it. Frozen accounts. A suspended contract. A mother who said, get a lawyer and don't call. A doctored invoice with her bird in the corner. A sister crying in a kitchen that was choosing Adrian's version by the minute. She counted it the way she'd counted the invoices, because things you can count have edges, and things with edges are finite. 4 things. Money, work, family, name. He had taken all 4 in one morning. That was the whole of what he had. She made herself understand that. There was no 5th thing coming, because he had spent everything at once. The leak, the freeze, the suspension, the mother. A man who fires every round in the first minute is a man who has decided he cannot afford a second minute. Adrian had learned the vendors were gone and panicked and thrown the entire weight of the lie forward at once. All of it, today, before she could assemble the truth into a shape a room would accept. Which meant he was afraid of the shape, which meant the shape existed. Her phone buzzed against her ear, a second call trying to come through. She pulled it down and looked. The anonymous number, the one that had told her not to sign anything Adrian sent. She stared at it. Seo Jun was still talking in her hand, saying come to the table, saying Da-eun's got the machine hot. The anonymous number rang, and then gave up, and a text arrived in its place. 4 words this time, from the same unknown line that had known her number before anyone should have. He's lying about the transfer. I can prove it. Don't answer your mother's house. She read it twice. For the architecture. Whoever built this understood her. Whoever built this was inside Adrian's version and wanted out of it. Someone close to him was sorry. She'd said that to Seo-jun on Monday, and here it was. Sorry and armed and afraid to sign a name. She put the phone back to her ear. Seo-jun. I'm here. The person who texted me Monday just texted again. They say they can prove he's lying about the transfer. They say don't go to my mother's house. A silence on his end, and in it, she could feel him weighing the same thing she was, that a helping hand you can't see is a hand that can close. Don't answer it, he said. Not yet. Don't answer him, don't answer them, don't answer your mother. Everyone who wants a piece of today wants you to move first so they can watch which way you break. A pause. You've got one appointment on your calendar, and it's a folder due at a table. Keep it. We build from the table out. She looked at the folder. She looked at the red banner she could still see behind the call. Access restricted. 4 words that meant she could not buy a coffee with her own money in the city where her own name was trending as a thief. Okay, she said. And this time, the word was not surrender, and not the flat coin she'd handed her mother. This time, it was a door she was choosing to walk through. 10 minutes, order me the black, and Seo-jun. What? When you said this turns. When it turns. She zipped the folder tighter against the photograph and the 4 counted losses. I want to be the one holding the match. Not you, me. My marks on every page he forged. It should be my hand that shows the room where the money actually went. The pause was long enough that she thought the call had dropped. Then, quiet, almost the first sound of a smile she'd heard from him. That's the right instinct. You keep saying that, because you keep having it. The bell again, faint. Come to the table. She hung up. She picked up the folder. In the mirror by the door, a woman with her accounts frozen and her family gone and her name on fire looked back at her, and the woman was not crying, and the woman had somewhere to be at 10 o'clock, which 3 weeks ago was more than she'd had. She put the phone in the inner pocket with the zipper, the one that already held the photograph that had never been the story. She turned off the light. At the door, her phone buzzed one final time. Not Celeste, not the anonymous number. Not her mother, Adrian, his own name, warm as a hand on the back of your neck. One line, the tone of a man performing patience for an audience that would later be shown the screenshot. I hope you're getting help. This doesn't have to get worse. Come home and we'll fix it together. For the family. She read it once. She did not read it twice. She already knew the architecture. He was building the record too. He wanted a message that made him look like the last decent man in the story, saved for the day someone asked what he'd done to help her. He was so busy building the room he thought he'd win, in that he had not once considered she might be building a different room, 2 streets away, at a table where a man in a wheelchair already had the real invoice under his forearm and the black coffee going cold in the exact spot where she was about to sit down and deliver a design for a building he had just tried to burn her out of. She did not answer him. She opened the door and walked out into the cold she could finally feel. And, for the second time that week, she was not running from anything. She was walking toward the only table in the city where the clock told the truth. Mireya put the design folder on the table before she sat down. Seo-jun slid the black coffee across without a word, and Dayun turned the sign on the door even though it was barely 10. The bell went quiet behind them. Guest floors, lobby, the walk from the water. Mireya said, Done. It's all in there. Seo-jun opened the folder. He read the way he did everything. Slow, and then not at all. his eyes stopping on the third page the way they had stopped on the supplier contract the first night. He closed it and set his hand flat on top. "Good," he said. "Now the other thing." The phone on the table buzzed. The anonymous number. Mireya let it ring out. It buzzed again. A text this time, not a call. "Please, I'm outside. 2 minutes, then I'll go." She read it twice. She looked up at the window. On the far side of the glass, past her own reflection, a woman stood with her arms crossed against the cold, honey highlights pulled back. A blush pink coat she'd chosen to be seen in, and now looked like she wanted to disappear inside. Celeste. Mireya did not move to the door. She turned the phone face down and looked at Seojun. "You said you didn't know who sent the texts." "I didn't." He followed her eyes to the glass. "I do now." Daeun was already unlocking the door. She held it open 6 inches. "One coffee," she said to Celeste. "You sit where I put you." Celeste came in like the floor might not hold. She sat where Daeun pointed. The third chair, angled so her back was to the room, the seat Seojun had built for Mireya on Monday. She put her hands on the table and then took them off it, as if the wood belonged to someone she'd wronged. "I sent the texts," Celeste said. "First thing, no preamble." "I know," Mireya said. "I'm looking at you." Celeste's jaw worked. "You have to understand how it started." "I don't have to do anything." Mireya kept her voice level. The boardroom voice, the one the family had called cold. "But talk." So Celeste talked. Not in a speech. She couldn't hold one together. It came in pieces, and Daeun set a cup in front of her that she never touched. Adrian had found her first. 9 months before the affair anyone saw. A gallery opening Mireya had been too busy to attend. He'd been kind in the specific way that felt like being chosen. He'd told Celeste she was the one who really understood him, that Mireya was all edges and deadlines and couldn't see him. Celeste had believed it because she'd wanted it. The older sister's fiancé looking at the younger one like she mattered more. "He timed it," Celeste said. Her voice cracked on the word. "The morning you came home early, he told me you had a bank thing, that you wouldn't be back till 9. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth. "I said that out loud. When I heard your key. She won't be back till 9. Like it was you who'd broken the schedule." Mireya said nothing. She remembered the sentence. She'd carried it 3 blocks with her hand on a cold wall. "He needed you to catch us," Celeste said. "I didn't understand that then. I thought he lost control. But he doesn't lose control. He had arranged it. He arranged it so you'd walk in, so you'd leave loud, so the whole family would have a story about you before you had a story about him." She looked at her own hands. "I was the story. I was the thing that made everyone stop looking at the money." "The rose gold bracelet," Mireya said. Celeste flinched. "What?" "You touched it. When I said it was nice. In the doorway." Mireya had filed that gesture away 3 weeks ago, without knowing why. "He bought it for you. He bought me a lot of things." Celeste's mouth twisted. "I gave them all back last week. Threw them in a drawer at Mom's. The bracelet's still there." She finally lifted her eyes. 3 days ago, I heard him on the phone in the kitchen, talking about you, about accounts, and a freeze, and a window. He said your name and then he laughed, and it wasn't a man who'd fallen for the wrong sister. It was a man reading a schedule. She swallowed. "I understood then. He didn't want me. He wanted the engagement broken at the exact right minute, before you two married, before the accounts joined, before you could see through the wall he'd built. If you'd married him, you'd have had access to everything. You'd have seen the fraud in a week. So he blew it up early, and he made me the bomb." The cafe was quiet. Daeun stood by the counter with her hand on the back of Seojun's chair. "So you started texting," Mireya said. "I couldn't sign my name to it." Celeste's voice went thin. "I'm in it too. I'm the affair. Anything I say, He'll turn into a jealous sister trying to hurt you. I know how that sounds. I sound like him now, worrying about how it looks." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, ruining nothing, because there was nothing left to ruin. "I don't have proof of the money. I just have a phone call I overheard, and a bracelet in a drawer. But you, the texts were the only thing I could do that couldn't be traced back to make it worse for you. Don't sign anything he sends. He's lying about the transfer." "That's all I had." Maria looked at her sister for a long moment. Then she picked up the black coffee, drank half of it, and set it down. "I already knew about the transfer," she said. "Seo Jun showed me the routing line 4 days ago, the one Adrian erased before he leaked the invoice. She watched that land, watched Celeste realize her warnings had been true and late and unnecessary all at once. But you didn't send those texts to save me, not really. You sent them so that when it ended, you could tell yourself you'd tried." Celeste's face broke. "That's not a judgment," Maria said, gentler now, and it surprised her that she meant it. "It's just the shape of it. You wanted a clean hand. There aren't any. Mine isn't clean either. Mine's on 40 pages of forms I signed at a kitchen island because a man I trusted called them vendor NDAs." She let that sit. "The difference is, I'm going to do something with mine. You're going to go home and sit with the truth. That's the whole sentence." "Mireya, I'm not finished." Mireya reached into the bag, into the inside pocket with the zipper, and took out the photo she'd carried since the first night. The hallway, the open door, the pink sleeve. She set it on the table face up. Celeste looked away from it. "This is the last thing I have from that morning. I thought for 3 weeks it was the story. It was never the story. It was the door he held open so I'd walk out shouting before I could count to 11. She turned it face down and left it there. "You can keep the affair, Celeste. I'm keeping the invoices." She turned to Seo Jun. "Tell me the part I don't have yet." Seo Jun had been still the whole time, watching the two sisters the way he watched a room fill. Now he reached into the folder and pulled a single sheet. A company registration, an old one, the ink of the filing date gone slightly gray. "You already have it," he said. "You just haven't said it out loud." He turned the page toward her. "Read the date." Mireya read it, and something in her chest unlocked. "My holding company," she said slowly. "I set it up 4 years ago, before the engagement, before I ever met him." She looked at the incorporation date, then at Seo Jun, understanding arriving in a clean rush. "Every dollar I actually earned, the in-upstate, the first 3 contracts, the real work. I moved into that company 2 years ago when my accountant told me to separate operations from ownership. It has its own accounts, its own filings. It has nothing of Sunmark's in it. Nothing Adrian ever touched. He built his fraud through the studio," Seo Jun said. "The operating entity, the face. But your money, the money that proves you built something real, on merit, before he existed in your life, was never in the studio to begin with." He almost smiled. He froze the studio accounts, the personal, the refinance. He couldn't freeze what he didn't know was separate. He was so busy proving the dowry was dirty, he never checked whether there was a dowry at all. There wasn't. There was a company you built with your own hands, 4 years before his. Mireya sat back. For the first time in 3 weeks, the cold calm turned into something with heat under it. "It was in plain sight," she said. All of it was. Seo Jun spread the record beside the property file, the 12-story Hanul building, the shell address, the 90% that flowed 3 days out of every fake invoice. His laundering runs through a building. A building has an owner. He's been paying rent for a 1.5 years to hide money in a house he thinks is a stranger's. He set his jade ring against the paper. "It's mine. The shell above his is mine. The floor plan of his entire operation is a Hanul address, and he walked into it every day." Then why hasn't it ended? Mireia said. If you have all of it, if you're who you are. She looked at him, really looked, the way she'd forced herself not to since Monday. Who are you, Seo-jun? You said I'd get close to needing the other name. The doorbell hadn't rung, but a man was standing inside it. He was tall and stiff-backed, silver at the temples, thin-rimmed glasses, a black high-collar suit that belonged to another decade. A fountain pen sat in his breast pocket like a tool he still used. He'd let himself in with a key Da-eun apparently allowed him to have, and he looked at Mireia with a severity that would have frightened her a week ago. Seok Tae-woo, Seo-jun said. He runs the part of the house that touches paper. He's spent 3 weeks arguing that I should have let you drown. I argued you should not have moved her name off the vendor list, Sok said. His voice was dry as the pen. It told Adrian Vale someone was inside his machine 4 days before we were ready. He set a slim envelope on the table in front of Mireia, not Seo-jun. I was wrong about one thing. I thought protecting her cost us the timing. He tapped the envelope once. It bought us the timing. He panicked. He spent everything in one morning. A man who fires every round in the first minute has nothing left for the second. He looked at Seo-jun. You called him Baeko behind his back for a year and never once to his face. She's earned the face. Baeko, Mireia said. White tiger. Seo-jun didn't touch the tattoo on his neck, and he didn't need to. The name people use when they can't use mine, he said. You needed it. Now you have it. It doesn't change the deal. The deal is you correct your own record, in your own hand, in a room that belongs to me. Because that's the only version a court believes. He looked at her the way he had that first morning, all the way in, no pity in it. Then he did the thing he had told her contracts that trapped people were the other man's work. There's one more thing I want, he said, and it isn't part of the job. You can say no and the job stands. He set both hands on the arms of the chair. Marry me, not to bind you, not for accounts, not for a wall, not for anything Adrian would understand, as a choice, the kind you make with your eyes open. Mireia looked at him for a long moment. On one condition, she said, no lies, not one, not the small kind you tell to protect people. If I ask you a thing, you answer it, even when the answer is a garage ramp and 11 minutes. That's the only kind of marriage I'd survive, Seo-jun said. Then yes. Da-eun made a sound behind them that was almost a laugh, and turned to the espresso machine so no one would see her face. Seok Tae-woo took the fountain pen from his pocket and set it on the table beside the black coffee and said nothing, which from him was a blessing. They married 11 days later, and they married in the flagship. It was Mireia's idea, and Seo-jun understood it before she finished the sentence. An ultra-modern Hanol hotel, the guest floors she'd designed, the walk from the water to the desk. A wedding needs vendors, contracts, a venue agreement, 100 pieces of paper that route money through a building and require signatures from everyone who benefits. Adrian could not stay away from a Hanul event where his ex-fiancé married the developer. He'd have to come to control the story, to be seen forgiving, to be the decent man in the photographs, and the moment he walked in, every document he touched was legally captured inside a building whose owner had spent 18 months waiting. She wore a burgundy gown off the shoulders, the gold at her ears and throat, and she stood in a lobby she'd built to make people feel they could set the bag down. Adrian came in a navy suit and a pastel pocket square, smiling the smile that never reached his eyes, ready to be gracious. Seok Tae-woo met him at the door with a clipboard and a warmth Adrian mistook for deference. By the time the toast was poured, Adrian had signed a guest register, a liability waiver, and an acknowledgement of the venue's ownership. 3 signatures, in his own hand, placing him knowingly inside the structure he'd laundered through. The face he'd borrowed from Mireia, he'd now pressed onto Seo-jun's paper himself. He didn't know yet. He raised a glass. He said, "To family." And Maria, who had said it back to him once at her mother's table with a photo burning in her lap, did not say it back this time. She only smiled the closed, asymmetric smile and let him drink. The honeymoon was a house on the coast, North Light, the water close enough to hear. On the second morning, Seo-jun rolled onto the deck and handed her a folder, the last one, thicker than the others. "You asked for no lies," he said. "This is the last thing I know that you don't." She opened it. Financial records, a chain of them, 4 years old. Payments from a numbered account into the hands of men who were paid to be at the top of a parking ramp on a specific night. She followed the money up the way she'd learned to follow it, invoice by invoice, and at the top of the chain, before it went numbered and gray, was a name. Adrian Vale. "He financed them," she said. She wasn't asking. He was young, a fixer for older men. It was the job that made his career. Seo-jun's voice was flat and even. He didn't know the son in the second car survived. He didn't know the man who bought his fixer that chair was the same man who owned the building he'd hide his money in, 11 years later. He walked into my house to launder money, and he never once knew whose house it was. And the plan, at the end, was to pin every crime, the killing money, the shells, all of it, on the woman with the clean face and the bad refinance loan. He looked at her. "On you. You were never the mark for the money. You were the mark for the blame. Both of them. My father and you. Same man, same method, 11 years apart." Mireia closed the folder. The cold calm was there, the one that had frightened her by how useful it felt. She let it settle into something permanent. "Then we don't burn it," she said. "We file it, in your hand and mine, in a room that belongs to us." It went cold and it went legal, which was worse for Adrian than anything loud. The invoices in her own name, corrected by her own hand, filed by the founder correcting her own record. A court believed her because there was no rancor in it, only paper. The routing line she'd kept under a mattress showed the room exactly where the money went. The wedding signatures placed Adrian inside the building knowingly. The 4-year-old chain named the boy who'd financed a garage ramp. He'd built a lock around her hand. Her hand was the only one that fit it, and she turned it. Adrian was arrested at her mother's house, at breakfast, where he'd installed himself as the decent man. Denise opened the door to men with a warrant and a name that wasn't her daughter's. She called Mireia that afternoon, and for the first time in 3 weeks, there was no verdict in her voice, only a question she didn't know how to ask. Mireia said, "Okay." The same coin, and this time it wasn't armor. It was just a daughter letting a door stay open a crack. Celeste got what she'd been left, the truth and only the truth, and a rose gold bracelet in a drawer she never wore again. Mireia walked back into the flagship a month later as lead designer of record, the contract unsuspended, her name cleared in the same building it had been buried in. The staff who'd read the headlines watched her cross the lobby she'd built and understood, from the way she set her bag down at the desk, that they'd read the wrong story. Daun kept the cafe open late. Sok Tae-woo kept his pen. Seo-jun kept his word. And Mireia, who had once been told by the people who made her that she was too much, too controlling, too cold, too sharp, too watchful, stood at the water she'd designed the whole hotel to walk toward, and knew the shape of what they'd never understood about her. They called me too much, so I became more than they could ever reach. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever built something with your own hands, only to watch the people closest to you call you too much for refusing to shrink? Have you ever discovered your name signed onto a lie you never agreed to and had to prove your worth all over again? And when the truth finally surfaced, did you choose noise Or did you choose the quiet strength of walking away as an equal? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about betrayal, truth, and dignity, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel